Tail of the tape, number 6 on deck, the second Buckeye that we are talking about today, Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver from the national champion Ohio State Buckeyes. 6'1", 202 pounds, born October 14th, 2002. He will be just a shade under 23 years old on draft night, won't turn 23 until his rookie season. Some background information on Emeka Egbuka. For those of you guys that don't know, he was the number 1 wide receiver in the 2021 recruiting class, a class that had Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Nabers, Brian Thomas Jr., Troy Franklin, a number of really, really high recruited wide receivers in last year's draft, most of them. Emeka Egbuka was actually number 1 among that group. When you look at how his profile developed over the course of his Ohio State career, he came into that Ohio State Buckeyes crew when Garrett Wilson was there, Chris Olave was there, Jackson Smith-Njigba was there, and fellow freshman Marvin Harrison Jr. was there. He didn't really get a major role in 2021 until the 2022 season when JSN dealt with a hamstring injury all season. He took over that slot role for Ohio State, and he and Marvin Harrison really, really had a monster season alongside CJ Stroud, who, of course, eventually got drafted 2nd overall to the Houston Texans. Entering the 2023 NCAA season, we did summer scouting, and I had both Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka as my wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 in the 2024 wide receiver class, respectively, just ahead of Malik Nabers, who was actually my wide receiver 3 in the class after his sophomore year. In 2023, Emeka Egbuka is dealing with injuries most of the season. He suffered a sprained ankle in 2023 against Maryland in October. He eventually had tightrope surgery at the end of the year. So even though he only missed 3 games in 2023, he just wasn't the same. He was playing a little bit hobbled. Fast forward to this year, coming off of tightrope ankle surgery, he carves out 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns alongside yet more future NFL players in the 2 running backs, of course, Trevion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, and of course, Carnell Tate, who projects to be a top 5 wide receiver, give or take, in next year's class, and the future 2027 101 in Jeremiah Smith. For those of you guys that don't know, true freshman Jeremiah Smith was a 5-star recruit, came in and alpha Emeka Egbuka, and had probably one of the best freshman seasons we've ever seen from a young wide receiver. So unfortunately for Egbuka, he has been kind of a victim of circumstance here. He has so many dudes that he's had to play alongside, from JSN, Olave, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison, Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Smith, and countless others. I mean, Brandon Innes and a bunch of other dudes were high recruits as well. Emeka Egbuka just never got a chance to be a 40% target share guy, like if he played at Maryland, for example. But you look at how he produced throughout his college career, and you say, man, 2 1,000-yard seasons, 1150 and 10 touchdowns with Marvin Harrison on the same field, 25% plus target share as a true sophomore. A lot of impressive stuff about his profile. But let's get into the actual tape with Emeka Egbuka. What does this guy do well? The answer is he has automatic hands. He's got absolute mitts. His hands are an asset to his game. As a slot wide receiver in college, which is a knock on him, he's used a lot of the time on slot fades and red zone looks. Against Iowa in 2024, he had 3 touchdowns in the red zone alone just in that game. Career contested catch rate of 54.3%. And in 2024, coming off of tightrope ankle surgery, he posted a 59.1% contested catch rate, going 13 of 22 on contested looks. An NFL team is going to love the reliability of Emeka Egbuka. You have a 3rd and 4, 3rd and 7. Emeka Egbuka is your guy. Only a 5.5% drop rate, which is a pretty solid mark. And like I said, very reliable in contested situations, fights through contact, can make catches outside of his frame, make spectacular catches, everything you'd want him to be able to do. So that's strength number 1. Strength number 2 is his ability to run routes. And I don't give super high route running grades to just anybody, because I usually do find that most college football wide receivers can run 3 or 4 routes really well. And maybe they have a designated route tree where they run drags and sticks and digs and go routes. And that's pretty much all they run throughout the entirety of their college career. Well, at Ohio State, you have Brian Hartline coaching the wide receivers there and proving time and time again that Ohio State wide receivers are good route runners. You look at Garrett Wilson, you look at Chris Olave, you look at Jackson Smith-Njigba, you look at Marvin Harrison. They all end up becoming great route runners because of the coaching that they got in college, combined with what they do in the NFL. Egbuka has nuance to his game. You don't usually see this a lot with NFL prospects, but he works back to the football on comeback routes. He explodes out of his breaks. When he sharply cuts out of in and out breakers, you notice it. He squats against zone coverage in between zone defenders. He's able to find open space better than any wide receiver in this class. He has just about everything as a wide receiver prospect that you could possibly need. And if you look at his reception perception profile, 82nd percentile against zone coverage, you might think, oh, that's pretty solid. Dog, most of the NFL teams play zone coverage almost exclusively. If you're able to beat zone coverage at an 83.6% success rate, that is an absurdly high number. And if you're wondering, oh, he was a slot receiver, how well did he handle press coverage? 92nd percentile against press. Now, in the write-up, Matt Harmon details that he struggled a little bit against man coverage because he wasn't able to maybe throttle in and out of his breaks as fast as maybe some of the other receivers in this class. But Matt Harmon calls him essentially a Amon-Ra St. Brown 2.0, which to me is an awesome comparison for him because he was in the slot about 73% of the time. But I'll go a step further than this. I actually disagree with Matt Harmon and the common sentiment around Emeka Egbuka that he should be a slot-only player. Because to me, this is a player that should maybe play slot year one, but by year 2, year 3, year 4 of his NFL career, I expect him to be a staple on the outside. Think of how A.J. Brown progressed as a player from year 1 in Tennessee, used a little bit more sparingly as a slot receiver, a little bit more simplistic route tree. And then by the end of his tenure in Tennessee and now, of course, with Philadelphia, he's a full-fledged NFL wide receiver who can run every route in the book. So that's my thought with Emeka Egbuka is, yeah, he's a little bit limited right now as far as what he could project to be. But I do think he can become an NFL outside wide receiver. And honestly, I think he could even do it day one. I just think he'd be better if he got to learn the NFL game where he feels comfortable. So strength number 3, yards after catch ability. Again, whenever I talk about a prospect that their top 3 strengths are route running, hands, and yards after catch ability, they're almost always hits in the NFL. Ladd McConkey was one of those guys last year. Malik Neighbors, one of those guys last year. They're always hits. If you get open, catch the football, and do something with it, that's the easiest thing that you can do as a wide receiver. And Emeka Egbuka has 4.48 speed as he tested at his pro day, 9.72 relative athletic score. That's on display in this area. A career 6.6 yards after catch per reception. That is in the 69th percentile in the prospect model. And what I find impressive about that number is that he consistently worked over the middle of the field, breaking tackles and juking tackles from linebackers and safeties, as opposed to working on the outside, catching a bunch of short passes against cornerbacks. They're generally worse tacklers. I just see a complete wide receiver in all 3 of the main jobs: get open, catch the ball, and do something with it. The common sentiment on Emeka Egbuka is that he's a safe prospect. And now I'm challenging people out there who think he's just a safe prospect to tell me why that's being said. Obviously, he's a safe prospect, meaning that he's a clean projection, but why doesn't he have a high ceiling? He has the athleticism. He played with all the stars, got the coaching, has the dog factor. He was a 5-star recruit. He's an elite athlete. Like I said, what's the issue here? Why doesn't he have a high ceiling? Why does everybody just call this guy safe? Why does everybody say he's a clean projection, but I don't think he can be a number 1? My question to you is, why can't he be a number 1? Amon-Ra St. Brown's a number 1 as a slot receiver. There's tons of dudes out there that start their career off as maybe a slot-only projection and become number 1s. Justin Jefferson, they thought he could only play in the slot. A.J. Brown, they thought he could only play in the slot. Strength number 4 is toughness, run blocking, that dog factor. This is my favorite trait of Emeka Egbuka's. And if you guys couldn't tell, he's one of my favorite players in the entire draft. First off, some receivers just have this indefinable dog mentality, and you know it when you see it. And Emeka Egbuka has it. 6.5 yards per carry as a jet sweep guy. That shows his ability to be an explosive athlete. The fact that Ohio State let this dude run block for 326 snaps this year without a single penalty committed. Why do you think that Trevion Henderson led the NCAA in yards per carry? It's because Emeka Egbuka is that good of a blocker, that much of a great teammate. The contested catch rate, the willingness to play through a grade 2 ankle sprain his junior season that required surgery at the end of the year. He's just an absolute dog, man. How can you not love a receiver like this who's selfless, who's not a diva? Teammates rave about him. Most of the people said we wouldn't have won a national championship without this guy. As much as Jeremiah is going to get the fanfare, he's the dude that's the rock of this offense. So many teammates gush about this dude. As a Bucs fan, he would fit right in with our receivers because I've seen firsthand what it takes when you have 2 selfless, absolute studs like Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, and there is a lot of Chris Godwin to his game, and spoiler alert, that is actually my comparison for Emeka Egbuka. Strength number 5, speed, acceleration, athleticism. Someone direct me to the trait that this guy can't be a number 1 in the NFL. I'm dead serious here. 89th percentile shuttle time, 89th percentile vertical jump, 1.50 10-yard split, was literally faster than Xavier Worthy's 10-yard split. So I don't want to hear that he's not fast enough or he doesn't have burst or whatever. He was a 5-star high school recruit, and he ran a 1.50 10-yard split. He is fast enough to be a number one receiver. Point it out in the comments, please. If you feel that there's a legitimate reason why he can't do it, point it out in the comments for me. Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson were not dominant number ones at this school either, because they were competing with each other for targets. And guess what? In the NFL, Chris Olave is the clear number one in New Orleans from a target share standpoint. Garrett Wilson, clear number one in New York from a target share standpoint. So I love Emeka Egbuka. He has all the size, all the traits, all the athleticism to be a number one in the NFL. Production profile-wise, this is what he stacks up in the FSC prospect model. I don't think people really appreciate that he has an analytics grade on par with Jackson Smith-Njigba, Jerry Jeudy, and DJ Moore, while producing alongside the guys that he had to produce with. 70th plus percentile pretty much across the board for every metric in this model, despite being on the same field as the number 2 prospect in the history of this model, Marvin Harrison Jr., number 13 prospect in the history of this model, Garrett Wilson, number 15 prospect in the history of this model, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and number 31 prospect in the history of this model, Chris Olave. And I have not put Jeremiah Smith into the model yet, but I'm sure he would rank very, very highly, and we'll find that out come 2027. But here's the thing with Emeka Egbuka. His best comparable in the model is DJ Moore. I think that's a great comparison for what he could turn into at the next level. A lot of people actually coming out of Maryland had questions about DJ Moore's ability to be an outside receiver because he had a Mickey Mouse route tree and people didn't quite see it. I just don't get it with this guy, man. I don't get where the hate is coming from. To me, he's a very clear top 15 caliber wide receiver that I would spend a high draft pick on. Weakness number one that people like to point out to, like I said, he never was an alpha. Year one, he's outproduced by Garrett Wilson, JSN, Chris Olave in 2021 as a freshman. Year two, outproduced by Marvin Harrison in 2022 in that year with CJ Stroud. Year three, outproduced by Marvin again, and he was banged up for most of that year. Year four, he's outproduced by freshman phenom Jeremiah Smith in 2024. Just because he played with all these studs doesn't mean he ain't a stud himself. Weakness number two, downfield usage, primary slot usage in college. A lot of people are going to point to this. 73% of the snaps from the slot in his career, 7.9 average depth of target last year, 9.0 in 2023. However, in his best season in 2022 with CJ Stroud, he only played 68% of the snaps from the slot, played a little bit more on the outside, and had the highest average depth of target of his career with 10.2 yards, and also had 17.55 yards per target deep, and a 93.6 PFF receiving yard grade deep as well. So he was used a lot more downfield in 2022, and spoiler alert, it was his best season. So to me, I see a guy that, yes, would probably play best early in his career from the slot, but can develop and get a bigger part of his game downfield because he just simply wasn't asked to do that at Ohio State. They had Marvin Harrison for that. They had Jeremiah Smith for that. Emeka Egbuka's role was move the chains, keep the offense on schedule. So for me, I get the weakness that he played mainly in the slot and he didn't really have a whole lot of downfield usage, but I think it was more a victim of circumstance. Like I said, that's what they asked him to do. So he did it because he's a great teammate and he's a selfless teammate. Like I said, he's going to project for some teams in the slot, especially year one of his NFL career, but I am very confident he can be more than that. And then weakness number three, like I said, he coming off of tightrope ankle surgery 2 years ago, fluctuating profile. He's a little bit older coming out. Ideally, he would have had the 2024 season last year and would have been in last year's draft class because then he would have been coming out as a 21-year-old true junior, but injuries happen. And I'm sure he wanted to win a national championship and he did win a national championship. So final grade for Emeka Egbuka, 88.0. You can see I'm a little bit higher on him than Danny is. He is my wide receiver 3 in this class. Very, very close with Tedero McMillan, who's my wide receiver 2. And of course, if we are not including Travis Hunter, they would be my wide receiver 1 and 2 respectively. As far as comparisons and team fits, my comparison is very simple. He's Chris Godwin. The toughness, selflessness, absolute dog factor is why he reminds me of Chris Godwin. Not to mention, Chris Godwin can play in the slot and, probably excels more in the slot, but he can play both. And he is great after the catch, has great hands, underrated route runner. They are so similar to me. I also used to like as a comp Chris Olave plus like 20 pounds because he's a lot bigger or thicker than Chris Olave, but that seemed like too lazy of a comparison because he wears number 2 for Ohio State and so did Chris Olave. So that's where I'm at with that. NFL mock draft database has him going projected at 33rd overall. To me, that's way too low. I'd feel comfortable taking him inside the top 15 picks. Egbuka is a fantastic fit if he slides to one of those teams in the 20s that could use a wide receiver. The Packers, definitely a big projection of his. The Texans, back with CJ Stroud, would be great. The Rams make sense, as do the Bucks too. If we wanted to get a long-term Godwin, Evans kind of third receiver who can get coached up, I actually would feel very, very happy as a Bucks fan if we drafted Emeka Egbuka. But the best 3 fits, in my opinion, are these. The Cowboys, either at 12 or they trade down. Perfect complement to CeeDee Lamb over the middle of the field. Move the chains. Los Angeles Chargers, again, perfect complement to Mike Williams, who's your sacrificial X, and Ladd McConkey, who is right now going to be your target commanding dude. And I expect, because the Chargers like run blocking and dog factor, and Jim Harbaugh got a good up close look at Emeka Egbuka many times as the Michigan head coach, that he's probably going to like him. Get this dude to Denver, though. That is the absolute best landing spot for him, because he can play slot year 1 alongside Cortland Sutton and be the long-term number 1. I said the same landing spot was the best for Tetairoa McMillan as well. But to be honest, of the 2 of them, it is better for Egbuka, because I do think Sean Payton would absolutely love this dude. He also got a good up-close look at Chris Godwin and how he was used. And of course, the Ohio State 6'2", 200-pound receiver sounds a lot like Michael Thomas as well. So what to do with him in rookie drafts? The answer is just to target him. Wherever he's going, whatever it ends up settling in at, because obviously post-draft, landing spot, draft capital, all that stuff's going to factor in to that big mega tier of players after Travis Hunter at 102 if he plays wide receiver, and Ashton Jeanty at 101. Cam Ward, the other 2 Ohio State players, Quinshon Judkins, Trevion Henderson, Amarian Hampton, Tet McMillan, Luther Burden, whoever else you want to group into that tier. They're all kind of in that same range. Right now, I have Egbuka at 107 in Superflex, 106 if you exclude Travis Hunter from that mix. I would be comfortable taking him as high as 104, 105, depending on your team need for a running back or a wide receiver or a quarterback. And also in 1 quarterback formats, I have him 105 without Travis Hunter, 106 with. He's as clean of a wide receiver prospect as you're ever going to find. And remember, that is a great thing. It is not a knock on him to be a safe wide receiver prospect. Route runners translate. Guys who have that dog mentality translate. You would have felt good about the he's too safe prospects like Justin Jefferson once upon a time. If you guys are new to fantasy, you won't know this, but back in 2020, people said that Justin Jefferson is just a slot receiver. He's a safe pick. He's a solid wide receiver, but he's never going to be an alpha. People said this about Justin Jefferson, and now he's the best receiver in the league. The Philadelphia Eagles drafted Jalen Reagor over him because they didn't want a slot receiver. This is an objective fact. So miss me with Emeka Egbuka as just a slot receiver, because Jefferson was a slot in college. Malik Neighbors was a slot in college. A.J. Brown was a slot in college. Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave had doubters that they could be number 1s at the NFL level. Rest assured, I will have an unbelievable amount of Emeka Egbuka in rookie drafts, and you guys should as well. I really hope that he honestly gets a bad landing spot and slides to the 2nd round, because I'm going to get even more of him then, because he's going to fall to like the 109 to 112. If he goes to the Raiders or the Titans or something like that, people will be not excited to draft him, but I will be excited to draft him. So Emeka Egbuka, big takeaway from this video is the narrative's dumb. Everyone thinks he's too safe, but safe is a good thing. It's something that you want. He's a clean projection. You are not going to miss on this player. He's going to be a top 24 dynasty receiver. I virtually guarantee it. He is the safest receiver in this entire class, in my opinion, and that is a good thing. So if you enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. Check out the other tail of the tapes. I did Trevion Henderson, Amarian Hampton, Tet McMillan, Travis Hunter, and Ashton Jeanty already. Next up on the docket will be the final Ohio State Buckeye, Quinshon Judkins, and then we should be getting to Luther Burden, Matthew Golden, the tight ends, the quarterbacks after I get back from New York probably, which is about a week or so from today as you guys are watching this. But should be fun. Check out the draft guide if you guys want in-depth detail like this video was on Emeka Egbuka for 65 prospects in the NFL draft. Head on over to flockfantasy.com. Use the promo code FSE for 7 days for free, 30% off any of the packages, 6 months for free when you sign up annually, plus a team review voucher so I can break down your dynasty team if that interests you. Check it out down below in the pinned comment. But with that being said, peace out, and I'll talk to you soon.